Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Sam Gallen, who is a hypnotherapist. And in today's episode, we're going to be diving into the world of hypnotherapy and, giving you a few tools to reprogram your subconscious mind, get rid of limiting beliefs, and just discuss all the many use cases of hypnotherapy and what hypnosis is and what it isn't. Because a lot of people think it's a man with a pendant hypnotizing you to rob a bank, but in this conversation, we're going to be debunking a lot of that too. So Sam, right off the bat, I guess a lot of people are probably wondering why would you use hypnosis, and what's it used for? Like what is it? Because there's a lot of myths.
It's a great question. Thanks, Dylan. So, why would someone come to me? Often, most people have gone to therapy or done their ayahuasca and been around spun their chakras and done all sorts of things. Done the drugs, and it's often a last resort where people come. They search hypnotherapy, and I'm kind of their last hope, or something towards the end of the line, which is a bit sad. But really, someone's coming to me because they are stuck or they're suffering in some area of their life. Maybe they're trying to quit smoking. Maybe they have a phobia of birds or spiders or flying. Maybe they have anxiety. Maybe they're trying to lose weight and they just can't keep it off, and it always just seems such a hassle. And But really, behind all of this, it's a really simple way of thinking about something I often will present to most of my clients is every human being has two versions of themselves. We have a regulated version of ourselves, and we have kind of a chaotic, deregulated version of ourselves. And everyone's a little bit different. So some people, when they get deregulated, they might get stressed or angry. Some people might get sad or depressed or go more internal. But words like chaotic, overwhelmed, stress, disease, sickness, these are all words we would use to for this deregulated version of ourselves. And really what I'm doing when I sit down with a client is we're helping the person move away from being deregulated to a more regulated, empowered, easeful, grounded version of them, where they can they feel in their power, they're able to make choice proactively, they're not in this reactive, triggered state. This is really, really important. And I think about a tree, Some people come to me and they're a little pot plant, and the wind of life is just really fucking them about and blowing them around. And as we become more healed or resolved, and we actually really resolve what's going on behind a lot of these symptoms, then we grow deeper roots, our trunk becomes stronger, and it takes a lot more, if maybe not any, it takes a lot of wind of the world and life to really move us about. And as we become stronger, more empowered people, that's really what happens, is we become these really powerful, strong trees, and it takes a lot to move us. So that's really the goal, is where we're trying to move away from being chaotic, deregulated, to easeful, regulated, empowered human beings. And that's really what I do, and why I do it. And hypnosis just happens, and NLP just happen to be tools that are very effective at doing that. And we probably will go into how they actually work and why that is the case, and why a lot of these other therapies fail. It's quite obvious, really. They're the ones that came up with the statistics for a lot of these statistics in the first place. So yeah, that's kind of that. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, definitely. I guess there's so many use cases, but what would you say are like the most common maybe conditions or problems that people have that you see, hypnosis being beneficial for?
Yeah, for sure. The top three are smoking, anxiety, and weight loss. They're what
Hmm.
most Googled, most searched, and what most people know hypnosis for, or hypnotherapy for, is smoking. I think it is even regarded now as the number one most successful treatment for smoking. But it can be really used for everything. Anything you go to a psychologist, a counselor, a therapist for, I don't want to say we can do it better, but maybe.
Yeah, because I remember seeing a statistic. I think it was like 93% of, I can't remember what condition, but it had a 93% success rate. This being hypnosis after like 6 sessions on one study, and it compared it to like normal therapy, and it was like, I think it was like a 30% lift after like hundreds of sessions or something. So
Yeah,
it's crazy.
that's a great study. Did you see that on my website? I've got it on my website.
Um, no, I think it was. Do you know? There's a hypnotherapist called Grace Smith or something in the States.
I'm pretty
But
bad at that.
okay. But no, I'm sure your website's got a lot more.
That's exactly right. That was it was late last century, and yeah, they did a study where they compared psychoanalysis,
Okay.
behavior therapy. They don't specify if it's CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, but it'll be similar versus hypnotherapy, and and it's quite interesting because psychologists over here in Australia, I imagine UK similar. Most psychologists are using cognitive behavior therapy. But I got a few friends from South America and their psychologists are using psychoanalysis. So that was the first one on that chart. They compared psychoanalysis, CBT, and then hypnotherapy. And you're right, hypnotherapy, 93% success rate after 6 sessions, which is insane. CBT is, I think, about 70% after 22 sessions. So it's all right, but I mean, compare it to hypnosis, why bother with that? And then you've got psychoanalysis, which is insane. It's like 22% success rate after 300 sessions. It's wild.
Wow.
I just started this show on SBS called Couples Therapy, and that's working, I'm pretty sure, with psychoanalysis. So if you want to see that in action, and you've got to get a sense of why it's so ineffective, you can go watch that show.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's very,
I'll put,
it triggers me, talking of being deregulated. That's what we do.
yeah. Awesome. No, I'll pull that from your website. I'll put that on the screen while you were talking there, hopefully, so people can
Yeah,
see that.
cool.
But yeah. So why is it that hypnosis is more effective? Because like from my understanding, obviously a lot of traditional therapies, it's just talking about the problem and talking about it and exacerbating it and just going around in circles. So I guess how in your mind is hypnosis different? Like what sort of drew you to hypnosis? What was it about hypnosis and hypnotherapy that you thought was like a bit different, a bit unique?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's most people have no idea, and it's definitely a battle and a struggle in terms of marketing yourself and getting
Yeah.
yourself out there. And some people like Tony Robbins, who's trained in NLP and hypnosis, would never promotes himself as a hypnotherapist. People have probably heard of Paul McKenna. He does, which is great, but there's a lot of other people out there that use these tools kind of behind the scenes and promote themselves as a coach or a life coach or something along those lines. And there is it is one of the struggles because people have this expectation that it's a bit woo woo fairyland. You're gonna dangle a pendulum and you wave your magic wand and then they wake up and all their problems are resolved. And although it's pretty remarkable how quickly it can resolve people's problems, 93% success rate after 6, it's not a magic pill. And everyone wants what's the next magic pill? And it's the closest thing we've got to a magic pill, but it's not a one-fix wonder, a one-hit wonder. Sometimes it can be, but it's not that every time. But what it actually is, and this is where it gets really crazy, is neuroscience, and people have probably heard of this, of 95% of everything that we do, everything that we feel, everything that we, all of our actions, these come from our subconscious mind. And people are like, what's the subconscious mind? That sounds a bit iffy. And it's actually not. And I'll give you a few examples of what it is and why this is so important. But even most science now acknowledges that 95% is all subconscious, so it's below the conscious mind. So for me, it makes sense that if you're going to design a therapy that's effective, then we want to find ways to make change to the subconscious part of the mind, the psyche. But most therapy doesn't. It's exactly what you said, we just talk about it and ruminate, and often it just makes the problem worse. It's insane, really. And And I'll give you a little caveat of where, some of these other therapies can be very useful. But do you want, if a snake bites you in the leg, do you want to talk about why the snake bit you in the leg? Where did the snake come from? How did you get into that situation that allowed you to have the snake bite you in the leg? Or do you just want someone to get the poison out of your leg and get your leg working again? And I think this is a great example of hypnosis and most talk therapy. Most talk therapy is talking about the why, what's going on, why did the snake bite you? Whereas I don't really care about that. And I just want to get the poison out of the leg, resolve it, get you walking again. So most of my tools that I use are really around that purpose. And there is, of course, some examples where understanding and having more information is useful for sure. And that's where I think psychologists and this kind of work and psychiatrists and certain medications are very useful. But a lot of people have tried that. They still have the problem. They're still smoking. They still have anxiety. And it's not until we really resolve the root cause of what's going on underneath that symptom, because the symptom's not the problem. It's just the symptom. And and we want to resolve it, really go in there, and we can talk a bit about how we do that in a moment. But that's really where you see this huge, powerful transformation, where people, over a few weeks or months, suddenly don't have anxiety anymore when they've had it for 30 years and they've been going to therapy for 20 years. It's crazy. So, we're going to go on a little bit of a tangent there, but hypnosis is really what we're doing in hypnosis, and it's the same with NLP, is we are focusing on the subconscious mind. So, and what the fuck's that, really? Because, that could be, it sounds a bit woo-woo for a lot of people, and it's fair enough. So, a great example of the subconscious is when we all started learning to drive a car, and if you don't drive a car, maybe when you learned to ride a bike. At the beginning, it was very conscious. You had to really think about it, and are you going to put your foot in the accelerator? Are you going to indicate? Do you need a shoulder check? Is your mirror here? You really had to think about it consciously. But over time, it just became very automatic. And then, within a few months, you're by yourself, you've got a beer in one hand, your phone in the other, you're talking to your kids in the back, and you can do that all automatic because you're driving automatically. This is a great example of subconscious. Now, when we're working in hypnosis, we're actually working with the unconscious, which is a level below the subconscious. And a lot of people don't really have the distinction between the two. And it doesn't really matter. And I think it's also important for your listeners and people to understand that really what these words are, subconscious and unconscious, they're just a word that we use to kind of categorize or understand a kind of a level of our psyche, of our mind, what it is to be a human being, And I think most of us at least can relate to some time in our life where we've wanted to change something. Maybe it's eat less before bed, or not snack when we're watching Netflix, or less time on the phone. We consciously want to make that change. And we've read it in a book and it all makes sense, and we know we shouldn't feel jealous or annoyed by our boss or whatever, our mums, but there's a part of us that just gets triggered. It becomes deregulated, and then we find ourselves going for the chips or going on the phone, and it's we didn't consciously choose that. You see, like we didn't consciously think about something to try and make us anxious, and that it just came spontaneously, or that urge, that emotion, it just came up, and then we had to do it. We consciously couldn't control it anymore. And that is an example of the subconscious. This is part of our mind, our psyche, that is much more powerful and stronger than the conscious mind. Now, that's really what we're wanting to focus on, what we're wanting to change. So how do we do that? And why does hypnotherapy and NLP work? And so, I can get into this now. So, we'll split it up because we've got hypnosis and NLP, and they're a bit different. But really with hypnosis is we're putting the brain into a particular state that allows change to more likely occur. And what do I mean by that? In hypnosis, we put the mind in the brain into this hypnotic state, into a trance state. And the thing with a trance state is human beings are going into this trance state all the time. Most of the listeners listening to this right now are probably in some level of trance. Maybe it's not as deep as you would go in a hypnosis, but it's a very highly absorbed state. There's a beautiful expression we have in English when you're entranced in the moment. You know, you're a 10-year-old and you're playing your Lego and you're just entranced in the moment, or you're watching your favorite movie. You're in it. You're so absorbed, and you lose track of time, and your mum calling your name because you're so absorbed. And this is really what hypnosis is. This is really what a trance state is. It's not about losing control or becoming unconscious. You're just very, very absorbed. And on a kind of a brain level, there's a number of things going on, but the two most important things that your listeners may have heard about is the prefrontal cortex. So when we go into a trance state, the front of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, will slow down, activity will slow down there, and we can bypass what's called the critical faculty, which is kind of a name for the part of the brain which is responsible for reason, logic, analyzing, and often can get in the way when we're having a conversation consciously or not in a trance state. So we want to bypass that so the brain becomes more neuroplastic and it's easier for neural pathways to occur. That's one reason. The amygdala at the back, that is kind of responsible for anxiety and feeling stressed and overwhelmed. That's going to calm down and slow down a lot too. So most people, when we use hypnosis, feel very relaxed, very calm. Everything slows down, and we can start doing cool things. Where when the brain is in that state, it's easier for it to dissociate, and that's a very important part of healing. And there's two. I mean, there's a number of things, but there's two common reasons why people heal, and how healing actually takes place. There's often a release of something, so it could be an emotional release. You might find things like breath work and other body modalities, or you might hear a story of someone going to meditation or doing meditation and having some kind of emotional release. These are all the body releasing energy, often that hasn't been released or processed out previously. So that's part one. It's very, very important, is to release what hasn't been processed. It doesn't always have to be grief or sadness. For some people, it could be laughter or just a bit of the shakes. And then part two of that is a reframe, is a change in meaning, often at a subconscious level. And there's a great example of this is, it wasn't my client, it was my teacher's client. He had a lady come to her with a phobia of moths. There's a fear of moths. And she'd had this, I think, for a good 20, 30 years. And he put her into hypnosis. And often in hypnosis, we can touch on this a little bit if you want, is we'll do some form of regression. So we'll put the person into that trance state where they become very relaxed and hyper-absorbed. And then we take them back to the first time that fear or that anxiety or that behavior became part of their life. And for this particular lady, she went back, she was about 5, and there was a memory of her mum. And her mum was opening the wardrobe, and she said, "These moths will be the death of me." And it's just an expression that we use. But this 5-year-old doesn't know how to interpret that properly, and she just hears moths and death, puts those two together, and she grows up for the next 30 years with that belief and that decision at an unconscious level. She had no idea that had happened. And that's a really great, clear example of what can happen. And for her, that was a change of meaning. It was going back, and it was seeing that actually it was just an expression her mum used. There wasn't a real reason. And again, it was happening at an unconscious level, or at a subconscious, at a level below the conscious mind. And yeah, she no longer has the phobia of moths. So sometimes it can be that black and white, but there's often a change of meaning and an understanding that's not really about you. And it's usually something in the childhood, often before the age of 7, and you might have people who follow Gabor Mate or Body Keeps a Score. I've read the book. That's a good one about the body storing the energy. The body keeps a score. Might have heard these similar reframes, releasing energy, the body storing energy. And hypnosis is a very, if you know what you're doing, it's a very accurate and precise way of going in, really going to the beginning of the problem or the cause of the problem, the root cause, releasing what needs to be released from that moment, or gathering a new perspective about the situation. Now, like I mentioned, this can happen in all sorts of things, and you can get a new perspective. You might watch a movie or read a book, and it's something, a conversation with a friend. These are all moments something just might flick, and we just get a new perspective of something about ourselves, and that can happen at an unconscious. It kind of have an effect on the unconscious as well. But that's really what hypnosis is. We're putting that brain into that trance state where it's easy to dissociate, to follow instructions. It's more open to taking on suggestion. So if we are using more direct suggestion, like, okay, now when you go into bed tonight, you're going to notice the softness of the pillow, feeling your body relaxed on your mattress, and notice just how your mind begins to settle and calm and drift to sleep. And you might program that in to their psyche. And that would be more positive suggestion. But a lot of the time is we're really trying to resolve what's preventing them from getting what they want. And that is often a therapeutic, resolving something from the past, making a different decision, gathering a new resource, releasing something, new perspective, usually something along those lines. And that's a big difference between coaching and other work and it's equally important, is creating a compelling future. And we can touch on that too. I think it's amazing. It's something everyone should read and look into if they haven't, is look into Viktor Frankl's work. He's most known for the book Man's Search for Meaning, but it's about his life as a psychiatrist. He started as a psychiatrist. He went through the Holocaust, lost absolutely everything, and came out and went to create on logotherapy, which means meaning, the therapy of meaning, having a purpose. And there's some great, amazing insights, which I think most human beings can take some wisdom from that. And especially moving into a world of AI and technology and how we're going to find meaning and purpose, it's going to be even more and more important. So it's a beautiful book, and you can, if you've got Spotify or any of those things, a lot of these books are now free to listen to. But yeah, purpose, that's more future. And there's a cool. I know it's a little bit of a side tangent, but it's really cool because he talks about some studies that they did where they took a lot of suicidal people, depressed people, and they gave them a purpose. A lot of it, I think, was charitable work, volunteering, something that they felt was meaningful to their community, impactful. And within a few months, none of them were suicidal. Most of them didn't associate with having any depressive thoughts or feelings. They didn't do any of the therapeutic work I mentioned. They just gave them a compelling future and meaning. So both are very important, and but we'll talk. Hypnotherapy is really about, and most therapy is about resolving what's preventing them from making a step forward. But I think if you can find someone to do both, where you can resolve what's getting in the way and holding you back, whilst also creating this amazing, exciting future, you've got the best of both worlds. But yeah, so that's hypnosis. So any questions, or that makes sense before I touch on NLP, because NLP is also really awesome in its own different way.
Absolutely. I think what you said there about purpose as well is so important, like you say, having a compelling future, because obviously I'm sure you've heard of Ikigai, which like the Okinawans use, one of the longest lived cultures. So yeah, if you don't have a compelling future, then like you say, it can be really disempowering. But yeah, I'd love for you to touch on what NLP is, because a lot of people have maybe heard of it, or they hear the phrase sort of chucked around, but they're not sure what it is.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I do both, and I do a bit of coaching too. So I kind of have these three modalities, and they all kind of play a different purpose. So, where do I start? So, NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, came about in the 70s. And it's a beautiful story at how it came about. Was two men, Richard Bandler and John Grinder. I think that I could be wrong, but they were a bit upset with the therapy world, and they saw it wasn't very successful. It wasn't getting the results that really anyone. I mean, it wasn't really talking about getting results at all at the time. A lot of the literature they were reading. So what they did, and NLP started off as a modeling process. And what I mean by modeling is how can we learn from success so we don't have to reinvent and spend 10 years trying to kind of get that outcome. And this is really important because we can apply it to pretty much every area of our life. We can apply it to finances, business, marketing, health, relationships, all sorts of things. And I mean, a lot of you, for you as well, with the raw food and health, is we're looking at people who have shown a track record of extraordinary health and vitality, and it's like, what can we learn from them? Another great example that people use all the time is recipes for food. So, if you watch Jamie Oliver or Gordon Ramsay or something on TV, it's like, how can I achieve the same result? You just download the recipe or buy the book, and suddenly you follow those processes, and you can basically achieve the same level of success in creating that particular cake or pastry or whatever you're trying to make. So we can learn a lot from modeling. And what they did is, and this is, I mean, just that alone, I think is so important because there's so much noise in our world. Like really, this is how can we be a voice for reason? How can we hear the signal in the noise? It's something my teacher, Alistair, always bangs on about. I think it's so important. And, I don't have the answers, and maybe I'm somewhere stuck in the noise in some area of my life. That's part of the journey. But having that intention and that awareness that, there's so much conflicting information out there. So how can we pay attention to the signal in the noise? And modeling is such a good way to start. You've got all this information. Okay, who's been doing this for a long time, and what can I learn from them? Who's been in a long-term relationship, who's been healthy, who's been able to maintain successful finances, etc. So that's how NLP started. And what they did is they applied that same philosophy to therapy. So they took the three most successful therapists in the 70s, which was Milton Erickson, who's the most famous and more recent pioneer of hypnotherapy. They took Virginia Satir, who was a family therapist, and I always forget his name, but he was the founder of Gestalt therapy. Fitzgerald, I think. Fritz. Anyway, people get the point. Is they wanted to model success. How are these guys getting these people to the successful results where no one else seemed to be able to do that? And that's really how a lot of NLP tools came about. These two, John and Richard, they were learning from these three therapists and learning how they were able to get those successful outcomes and then making tools to help people move towards that. And what's really cool, and I think it's a really interesting distinction that we find ourselves still doing today, and it seems so obvious when you hear this, is they were studying the people who had successfully overcome the problem. And I'll say that again. So instead of, which is what we do a lot, is we focus and we study the person with the anxiety, with the phobia, with the sickness, is we're studying the people who had those problems but successfully overcome them. So with the phobia, because NLP is really famous for the phobia cure, and all they did was they just asked a bunch of people to kind of come to them who used to have a phobia of spiders or whatever it might have been, and then somehow successfully overcame it. And they learned from these people to create this toolkit, which we now use in NLP. That's kind of the history of it and what's behind it. But there's an important distinction that we have to make too in understanding our mind and the human experience when we're trying to change, is the mind and brain distinction. There is a difference between our mind and the brain. And on one level, we are just mammals. We can be conditioned and trained just like most other mammals. And we build habits like this, and we can condition ourselves very easily. And it's important to understand this, because sometimes the problem isn't a problem of the mind, it's a problem of the brain. So brain, we have kind of the hardware, the mammal, the conditioning, and then we have the mind, which is our language, the meaning, maybe some people want to use spirit, soul. These kind of things might be a little bit more associated in this part of us. And the phobia lady is a great example of meaning, because when we went back in time, she was able to change the meaning she gave to that situation. It wasn't an issue of the brain. And a good example of an issue of the brain might be smokers often will associate having a coffee or a beer with having a cigarette. So there's not really any meaning there. It's more just that the brain has been conditioned that coffee equals cigarette, beer equals cigarette. So NLP has a bunch of really great tools for kind of scratching those neural pathways in the brain and creating new, more resourceful, serving pathways, so that the person doesn't equal coffee equals cigarette. So NLP, it does a lot with meaning too, but it's a little bit different. I think it's a bit more effective than hypnosis for those particular type of problems. We can really kind of scratch that. Same with PTSD, any kind of trauma that still lives in the psyche. This is often because the memory hasn't been successfully processed into the hippocampus, into the long-term memory of the brain. So hypnosis could achieve a similar result, but NLP has an amazing process for allowing that kind of chaotic memory that's still in the front of the brain to process properly as it should, so it goes back into the hippocampus. And it's really incredible. Like, I had a client, it was a few months ago now, and she had a car accident, and she hadn't driven for a couple of years, because every time she'd see the brake lights, she would just freak out. She couldn't drive. She just stopped driving because it was just too unsafe. Anyway, around this process, it was like 10 minutes. Bit of a chat, 10 minutes. 2 weeks later, she bought a car, she was driving, and she had that fear, because that memory, every time she saw the traffic lights, it triggered this chaotic, unprocessed memory in the brain that hadn't been really processed properly. And that's where REM sleep is so important, because the REM sleep is processing all the memories of the day. But certain intensity, trauma, these kind of things, it's a little bit difficult for the brain to do that sometimes automatically. There's a number of reasons that might happen. But there's some really cool process. So NLP does a lot with that. That's how I specifically use it. But it's also a lot of the language and the filtering and what we're listening for when someone just, you sit down with someone, they just dump their whole life story on you. And you can kind of just filter out the information that's going to be really useful to really kind of bypass all the noise, because we want to get to the signal of what's really behind the smoking, anxiety, depression, alcohol, whatever it might be. So that's a big part of it too. So if you're ever looking for someone, really try and find someone that's trained in both hypnosis and NLP, because together they work really well. So that's kind of my 2 minute summary of of hypnosis and NLP.
Yeah, definitely. It's hard to summarize it, so concisely. But yeah, I think so. For you personally, would you guide a client? Would you use hypnosis to get them into maybe what brainwave state is it? Is it theta, where they're a bit more
alpha and theta? So it's similar to meditation. And there's another thing that I sometimes mention to people who've experienced meditation or done some of these YouTube stuff, these self-hypnosis, is your brain might have already, and your brain is always going in and out of trance. That's the thing. It's not a big, woo, amazing state that you might have experienced. It's very normal. But it's really the difference between meditation and hypnosis, or some of the YouTube relaxation stuff and affirmations and manifestations, is really what we're doing in that state. This is the big difference, is we put the brain in that state, and then we take it on a journey. We use some of these hypnotic tools to take to kind of gather new resources, kind of what I was talking about, release what needs to be released, get a new perspective, and then we upgrade, we kind of bring that up through their history. And Yeah, and there's a number of things that we do in that state, but it's very different to what you're just doing in hypnosis, where you might be just focusing on your breath or trying to quiet down the brain. And for a lot of people, meditation is a coping mechanism, just as smoking is, which we can talk about too if you want. But for a lot of people, it's really not helpful, and there's more and more research coming out on that, which is interesting too. But yeah. It's what we do that really makes it's the difference that makes the difference.
Yeah, 100%. So once they're in that state, then obviously that's when you'd use those tools to reprogram you said the subconscious mind, but also the unconscious. So the unconscious is a layer deeper. And yeah, why is it that, like, obviously you understand these topics, but why is it that we don't really hear about the unconscious mind in like the mainstream world? It's just mainly subconscious, isn't it?
Yeah. It's a massive buzzword for sure. I mean, look, I think they're all meaning the same thing. They just, when they say subconscious, they're just meaning the level or the layer below the surface, below the conscious mind. And for most people, that's fine. And I might use that. I would probably use that with most clients, because if I start using unconscious, subconscious, it's probably just going to confuse them. But what I mean is and I gave the example of, and I may not have clarified it as clearly as I could have earlier. The reason driving a car or learning an instrument or learning a bike is subconscious is because it's accessible to the conscious mind if it so chose. So you could go back, and a lot of parents who've taught their kid had to teach their kids to drive, they've had to take that subconscious automatic programming and then make it conscious again so they can pass it on to their kid. So the kid's like, all right, mum, how do I drive? They're like, oh shit, I don't know, I just do it automatically. And then they're like, oh wait, okay, no, yeah, I do this with my foot, I do this with my indicators, and then it becomes conscious again so they can teach their kid. Whereas if I ask you how you understand English, most people don't have a clue. It's completely unconscious. And we are using, we categorize a lot of things as unconscious. It would be the immune system, the digestion, the heart rate. We can manipulate that consciously with breath, of course, and breathing is unconscious too. It's not something we consciously having to interact with and think about. It just happens automatically. So, yeah, this is, and when we're in hypnosis, yeah, it might be subconscious, maybe. But what I find in my experience is most people come to me and they think they might have an idea of where their problem started. And every single time that's happened, it's been a different situation. It's completely unconscious to them that it might be a memory that was repressed and they had no recollection of it. Or it might be a memory that they had kind of a faint idea about, but they didn't know it was related to this particular problem. So, yeah, again, it's just words that we give to different layers of our mind and our psyche, just so we can, talk about it and understand it in a somewhat simple way. But of course, it's much more complex than that. And but it's a good word, because for most people it is unconscious. They're not conscious of it at all in any way. And that's why and that's why hypnosis is so successful, is because most people's problems are unconscious. They're not subconscious. They're not they're not the driving example. They are a deeper suppressed memory. They are something that's just a bit deeper, I think is an easy way to think about it. And there's other things we do. I think Richard, he would often say, how do you move your arm? And people might think, oh, well, I think about moving my arm, but that's not how you actually do it. That's just you thinking about it. How do you actually make each muscle do its thing so your arm can lift? Again, completely unconscious. All those subtle nuances, all those probably millions of things that are happening to move your arm. But language is a great example, because unless you have studied English or grammar, you probably it's so automatic, it's so unconscious, and you're understanding so much so quickly. It has to be an unconscious, because it's so much more useful. The unconscious mind can process information infinitely faster than the conscious mind. So Yeah, and again, from a maybe a more Western viewpoint, there'd probably be different levels of the brain and that have been activated um, to to kind of give you that feedback or give you that information or allow you to process that language so quickly, versus another part of the brain which needs to be more active and the conscious mind when we're thinking about what we're going to have for breakfast or creating a bridge. So I can't. I'm not a neuroscientist. I don't have the linguistic the knowledge to talk about that. But that might be. I'm sure that's what's going on from a more Western scientific point of view. But for us, it doesn't really matter. It's just we know that people have these different levels of their psyche, and things become automatic, become repressed, and we have these tools that can make the unconscious conscious. And some people might have heard of that beautiful quote from Carl Jung: "Until you make the conscious, I'll start that again. But until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life, and you will call it fate, or it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And it's very true because most people, that's another topic we can get into is why people don't change or why people don't want to change, and that's also it's a very interesting topic. But it's very much that when you become consciously aware of what's the truth, what really happened. Is it really about you, or is it your mum was a bit fucked up, or your dog had a bad day? It could be something as simple as that. And there is a caveat to that because some people have come from very traumatic lives, and that's still consciously I don't want to take them back and get a new perspective of some abusive event. So there's other tools, of course, we use in those situations where we can take on can kind of give the person a new resource and a new option that allows them to move through that at an unconscious level, and allows that memory to it might be reframed. There's a number of things, and I never know really what's going to happen. I give the client these tools and these opportunities and allow them to do what they need to do. I trust their unconscious mind to do what needs to be done. And it's just often the conscious mind is so in the way. But I'm rambling on here a little bit. So yeah, I hope that kind of makes sense. And
Yeah, that's a good distinction. I think that will help a lot of people because subconscious, unconscious. I think you articulated that well. Is there any just top of mind? Is there any are there any tools, like quick tools, maybe you'd give a client or someone, let's say they're out and about, they don't have access to you, and maybe they're feeling stressed, overwhelmed. Is there anything like you'd quickly have them do, or any
yeah,
tools?
there are. So I think these are based in NLP. And we spoke about it earlier. If you want, we can kind of do a little bit of a guided relaxation into a trance state,
Yeah.
if you like. But a number of things that we can do is if you kind of get a sense of the problem, maybe it's the anxiety, maybe it's the fear of something, your partner, or I don't know. And again, this is where we have to be careful because as soon as we make generalizations, we miss the mark completely. Because people's personal experience and tailoring this experience to the individual is so important. And I'll give you an example of why. Because of what I'm about to do is a great example. Some people are more feeling people. So, when they have anxiety, so anxiety, for example, is a generalization. What does that actually mean? How does the person, so if someone comes to me and they have anxiety, the first thing I want to do is find out what that actually is. How do they actually do anxiety? And for some people, it's really in their head. Their head becomes really over crazy and chatty and overwhelmed, and that might be what they're talking about as anxiety. Some people, it might be this kind of feeling in the stomach. Some people, it's this increased heart rate. Sometimes it's a combination of all three of them. Sometimes it's a noise that they just like, there's this this ringing in my ears. Like, it can be so diverse. So that's why we have to be really careful with generalizations. But for a lot of people, this can be really useful, especially with things like habits, if they're trying to, be a bit healthier or give up their phone or something. Maybe not the phone so much, but if you get a sense of a problem thing in your life, and usually this works best for habits and behaviors. If you get if you think about that and you kind of get a sense of that, and some people might prefer to do this closing your eyes, so don't do this when you're driving or when it's safe to do so. But if you can kind of get a sense of this thing, is it the X? Is it is it the chocolate? And everyone's going to have a different experience of that. So I'll use chocolate as an example, but you can do this with whatever might be the problem, something, whoever's listening. And if you can kind of get a sense of it as an image, if you maybe there's a feeling there that comes up, sure. But if you kind of just ask your mind, just to kind of, when you think about that, what do you see? And then just notice what you see. And the chocolate's an easy one because, people might, I see that Lindt chocolate and it's my favorite flavor. It's cherry ripe, or I don't know, cherry ripe's not Lindt, but there's a cherry flavor of Lindt chocolate. And then maybe someone who's trying to get over their ex, it might be their ex is like really close to them. The chocolate might be really close and big. So we're trying to see, and I would be, as an NLPer, you're asking really good questions to elicit this person's experience. This is really, really important. Because what you can then do, and this is again a generalization, but whatever you're thinking of you're trying to give up, if it's the X, the chocolate, try moving that further away to a comfortable distance, removing any color, maybe changing, if it's a movie, make it still. If there's any feelings that go along with it, what would happen if you ask that feeling, if you had to give that feeling a color, what color would you give it? And again, don't just kind of trust your intuition here, just the first thing that comes up. If I had to give that feeling a color, it would be blue. All right, and if you how big, if that feeling had a shape or a size, how big would it be? And then some people it might be like this, some people it's like over their whole stomach. So, okay, how big is it? What's the shape? What's the color? What's the shape of it? And if that feeling could make a sound, what sound would it make? And you can make that sound out loud. So what we're very cleverly doing here as we do this, and this might be a bit of a giveaway for the listeners if they're practicing this at home, is we are changing the kinesthetic, the feeling experience to now of a size, a shape, now a color, so it's more visual. And if it had a sound, we now change it to auditory. So we're dissolving this feeling into other senses that we have. And this can be really effective. Now, you might repeat this a few times with the feeling. So and if the feeling could say something, what would it say? If the feeling, and we kind of go through that. So if the feeling had a shape, how big would it be? What size is it? If the feeling had a color, what color would it be? If the feeling could make a sound, what sound would it be? If it could say something, what would it say? If it had a texture, what texture would this feeling be? Maybe it's a soft, silky texture. Maybe it's a rough, surf hard rock. And again, we're making that as a more of an external feeling. And we're changing. And this can, for some people, can work wonders. It can be, that can be a 5-minute problem solved. So that's something people can try with feelings. But if it's more of a visual thing, or you can ask your mind to get a sense of the X. And I had the client the other day who was trying to get over the X. And I just asked them to just see, and this is the crazy thing, is I asked them, like, when you get a sense of your X, how do you see her? And it was like right here on top of me. She's really close. And the irony is if any of us had that experience of our girlfriend or ex or any human being, it would be fucking overwhelming. It's the same with people who have phobia of spiders. Is you ask them, and it's usually this massive giant spider that's coming towards them, that's hairy and black. And if spiders were that big and hairy and black, we would all be terrified. But it's their perception, it's their experience of that thing. So we ask the person, okay, just make it smaller, move it away, move it a little bit further away. And usually when we can move that thing further away, and even like really far away if you want, so you can make it really tiny, like a little postage stamp, and you remove the color, stop it moving, that can really work wonders. And just do that like 5 to 10 times. Do it 5 to 10 times. Program that in. Just repeat it, practice that. You might sometimes if you do that effectively with a good NLPer, you only have to do it once. If you're doing it yourself, I'm not sure. If you, because it's very easy for human beings to interpret what I'm saying and when I'm with a client, I can check. I can be like, all right, what are you doing? But yeah, just notice if you do that once. If you move your X away, if you move the chocolate away, what do you notice? Does the chocolate still seem as appealing? Does the X still seem as whatever feelings, like jealousy or sadness, I don't know, whatever they might be going through, anger, does that feeling still seem as intense if you move them further away, make them smaller? So we can change the experience. This is a great thing that NLP does really well, is looking at how that person experiences the problem and then changing that experience maybe on a brain level. And that can be very effective. So that's something the viewers can try. If they... Yeah, look, I'm not going to mention any YouTube stuff because I think people get a bit lost in that. It's a bit of a grey area to find something good. But yeah, give that a go. Play with how do you experience it, move it further away, make it black and white. What do you notice? Does it make it less intense? Does it seem more dull? And then repeat that. Just bring it back to where it was, move it back to far away. Bring it back, move it, and just repeat that. And then give yourself a week and notice what happens. And I think you'll be surprised at how effective it is. I do struggle doing that to myself a little bit, but a lot of people have great success. I just love to just kind of switch off and just let someone, tell me what to do. Get dominated by my therapist.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I totally get that because I have thought that, because even maybe someone like Paul McKenna, I thought, I wonder if he can actually do it on himself because he's always doing it for others so well. Sometimes it's a bit harder to do it on yourself, and maybe you need a coach yourself or a therapist or a hypnotherapist. So that makes total sense.
For sure, I do that. I trade stuff with my colleagues all the time.
Yeah, why not?
And people do it on themselves. It can be done for sure.
Yeah,
And that's something, like you meant, you asked if there's some tools that we can do. It's a skill set that has to be learned.
Yeah.
So it's not as simple as just giving you, a quick few dot points and go run at home. It's like learning to become an engineer or a mechanic or really any skill set. It takes time, and you can try to do it yourself, or you just, like what Paul McKenna says, you can cut your own hair, or you can just go to a barber, and yeah, there's I think that's, for me, I just rather go to the barber.
Yeah, totally. No, I get it. I totally get it. I like what you did there with also encompassing all the visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, because obviously people have different modalities that maybe they have a preference to.
Absolutely, this is huge. Yeah, really, really important. Where
What do
again,
you?
sorry, you go.
No, I was just going to say, what do you find typically most people are? Do they have like a preference towards like visual, or
Yeah,
where
most
do
people.
people swing?
Yeah, feeling, kinesthetic, which is feeling, and visual or seeing.
Yeah,
I would say, at least in my experience, that's what most people have been. But it's usually you're not one or the other,
yeah,
and sometimes people get stuck in their problem. So they might be feeling in the depression, but in their successful areas of life, or other areas of their life, or when they've been healthy and not depressed, they've been very visual. So you might be
yeah,
helping the person come out of kinesthetic feeling and going back to visual. So yeah, it's often a combination, and it does change depending on the situation or the context.
yeah. Awesome. So then you'd make their images like darker, more quiet, less intensity in the feeling, and then would you maybe replace that with like something more empowering, like maybe their empowering future, or would that be something separate?
Yeah, that's a good question, because a lot of people, we love the affirmation game,
Yeah,
and as my teacher, drilled into us, he says, affirmations are based in fantasy, and positive reinforcement is based in reality. And he's not a fan of affirmations so much. And I get what he means, and I would probably agree that, but that was just something that came up. That's a little, not really what you asked, but it made me chuckle because it kind of reminded me a lot of that. Oh yeah, what do we want to put there instead? Oh, we're beautiful, we're amazing, we're rich. No, you're not. But but you might be. So we don't want to rob the person's esteem is earned and it's built. So if you're a lazy bum just at Netflix, watching Netflix all day, doing nothing with your life, you're not going to feel confident. You're not going to have a high self-esteem because, like Tony says, self-esteem is built by doing difficult things and challenging ourselves and growing. And so if we use affirmations or we say these things into our conscious mind, maybe it does have a ripple effect down, but it can often rob the person's self-esteem and make them feel worse because they tell themselves they're beautiful or rich or happy, but they know they're not. The unconscious mind knows that's not true. So, but coming back to your question, is when we're in trance, we can do things that work much better than affirmations, where when we resolve the issue, often something we do is what's called future pace, where we put the person with this new resource, this healed state, in the future. And again, we're not getting too conscious about it. We're just asking the unconscious mind to notice the changes, notice what's different. And it might be that they're more confident. It might be that they hold their posture more upright, or they feel more at ease or relaxed. I don't know. It's different for everyone. And then when they're in that state, they can take on those changes, and they often will take on those changes much more effectively than just telling themselves that they're relaxed when they're not. And I guess that is also a really important thing, I think, for a lot of people today. is the classic frog in water situation. We live in a culture that really promotes hustling, working hard, and the family dynamic is now pressured because both parents are usually working full time. You've got kids, you've got a mortgage, all these different things, interest rates, politics, it's all adding different pressures. And this is, you're a frog. Most people, we're a frog in a pot of water, and someone has turned that water, the gas on, and that water is heating up. And you can take the Eckhart Tolle meditation approach, and you can just meditate and tell yourself everything's okay and you're beautiful and it's all good, as that water continues to rise and heat up. And or you can fucking get out of the water. Or you can work on maybe, that's kind of, maybe trying to cool the water down. But most people need often just to get out of the hot water. And that's what we want to help people, is really get them out of that boiling water that their life or their unconscious mind has become. So, yeah, it's an important thing, and it's a challenge because we have so much pressure and gravity's working against us. Social media, the food system, all these different systems, having to be successful, to be an awesome mom, an awesome lover, an awesome parent, an awesome hustler, and it's it puts a lot of stress and overwhelm on the psyche. And for a lot of people, they just need to learn how to relax. And I mean, that's why I think coaching can be helpful, and life coaching, if you find someone good who has a track record of getting good results, is helping people navigate the shit show of their life. Really, it's like, how do you, if you're working full time, you've got 3 kids, and they're all different ages and going through different things, and your husband's a bit useless, and how do you navigate all that? Because it's bloody stressful. And this is the thing, it's not unique to human beings. Any mammal in a stressful situation or environment and we start poking them or putting stress under, they're going to have a similar response. They're going to become anxious or closed off, depressed. It's not unique to you. Is we want to, we want to allow that person to regulate and return to an easeful state. So that, amen to that.
Yeah. I think that's why NLP and hypnosis are so effective, because like you say, you're dealing with the root cause. You're not just using coping mechanisms to make yourself feel better in the moment. You're jumping out of the boiling water and you're dealing with a root cause, which I think is so key. And like you say, even coaches have coaches. I think there's a big pride thing where people think they're too, they don't need coaching. They're too good but even Michael Phelps, he had a coach. Like everyone has one.
Everyone has it, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Cristiano Ronaldo, does he? He's a coach. Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. But I'm just getting conscious of the time. Is there anything you want to add before we jump into the rapid fire questions?
Oh yeah, sure. I think I don't know what this podcast will be titled, but I get a sense that if people are listening to this, there's probably some area of their life they want to improve. And I think that's a really amazing quality, because not everyone has that. A lot of people just settle for where they're at. So if you do get a sense that, you haven't given up, don't never give up. There's always a way. And even if you've been to a hypnotherapist, maybe they were a shit hypnotherapist that just used generic scripts and just, didn't really care about really what was going on underneath. But there is always a way, and you weren't born with these problems. These were learned problems. And just like a child can learn to have a phobia of water within a second, it can also be relearned in a second. And find someone good in your area, find a hypnotherapist. They are everywhere. Some, do your due diligence, but it's not what people think. It's not the pendulum. It's really working with this part of us that's stronger than our conscious mind. The conscious mind doesn't have a clue how to fix it, really. It's tried everything. Countless examples of people in therapy. So, yeah, give something a go, and you'll be pleasantly surprised at how effective and how quickly things can change. So, yeah, that would be my final words.
Yeah,
Never give
absolutely.
up.
Exactly. It's like a relationship. If you have one partner, like your ex, who wasn't the best, it doesn't mean you stop looking for your dream partner. So yeah.
Well, some
Hundred,
people
hundred,
do.
yeah, I know, it's awful.
It's exactly. It's a great example.
Yeah.
100%.
Then you let a bad experience, hurt you twice. So if it stops you, then seeking, further knowledge or partner, then yeah, like you say. But if you're ready, we'll dive into the rapid fire questions.
Yeah,
So
cool.
clues in the name, just as quick as possible. But obviously, if you need to elaborate, feel free to elaborate more.
Okay, so I'll try and keep it in a few words. Is that how that usually goes? Is it just like, a couple of seconds to try and answer each question?
However long you need. But yeah, I've had one guest who took 40 minutes, but I was enjoying what he was saying, so I just let it roll.
All right, let's
All right.
go.
Okay. Describe yourself in one word.
Creative.
What is one book that everyone should read?
Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Nice. What is the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
Oh, good question. Something that's always lived with me is, it was a line from a terrible book, but we are the choices we make. And yeah, that spoke a lot to me. Is, the choices that I make really is a reflection of who I am. And it's just a quote: we are the choices we make. It's not necessarily a piece of advice, but I'm very conscious of my choices and my decisions, and it can be very little things, just how you treat the person who's serving you coffee or the groceries. But yeah, I think it's every moment we're making decisions, consciously or unconsciously, and that is a reflection of who we are. So if we can change those choices, make better choices, then I think we live a better life.
Absolutely, mate. It's all cause and effect, for sure. What are 3 things you can't live without?
Oh, a kitchen. I need my own kitchen to do my food. I do. I have to have a reasonable amount of money in the bank. I love that. It gives me a sense of freedom. Really, it does. And that might be, some people are like, oh, resolve that. But I think, yeah, I need some financial stability to feel easeful in myself. And maybe that will become a problem one day in my life, and I have to do some hypnosis on it. But at this stage, it's worked out pretty well. So money, kitchen. I think just other people. Really, like I'm living in a bit of a community environment at the moment, and when we have other people, we can just learn so much. We feel, I think it's the way we've evolved as well. Human beings have evolved in community, and we've lost a lot of that in the modern culture. But sometimes it's triggering and annoying, but sometimes it's amazing. Most of the time, it's amazing. You can just you feel supported. You can feel needed, important. You have someone to talk to, and meals, and all sorts of things. So community, people, animals. I love animals too. So I combine them into both.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What's your greatest strength and what's your biggest weakness?
My greatest strength and my biggest weakness. Greatest strength is, I think, my ability to find humor in dark moments, or just bring a playful energy to most situations. I don't take life too seriously, and I try and have a good laugh, if it's not a moment that needs otherwise. And my weakness, something that I'm working on. I think it would be something related to some relationships and being in relation with a partner. And yeah, maybe sometimes it's been a bit selfish, I think. That's shown up in my past relationships, and I'm pretty aware of that. It's something I want to work on. And that awareness, of course, is important. But I do, I'm not, a narcissist, but if I can very quickly just love doing what I'm doing and being in my own world, and sometimes I prioritize that over maybe what they need. So that's something that I'm working on.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're all a work in progress, but yeah, if any ladies want to hit up Sam, I'll leave the links in the description.
Yeah, be warned. He's a bit selfish.
And he might hypnotize you.
Excellent.
That's all good.
The manager.
I'll take my cut after, but yeah.
Yeah, no worries.
I know we talked about. Say that again.
You can look after the kids.
Yeah. The nice duties. I know we talked about this earlier, but do you believe in having a purpose? If so, what is your purpose in life?
It's a great question, and I believe our purpose changes, and it's something that Viktor Frankl talks a lot about in his work. As when we're young and children in school, we have maybe not a purpose then, but maybe later on in school we feel like our purpose is to learn and study, and then we go to university, our purpose is to learn, and then our purpose is to work, and then maybe we have a family and our purpose is to be a parent, and then we retire and the purpose changes then. So I think this is a trap that a lot of people fall into, is what is my purpose? I think a better question is, what comes quite naturally to me? What do I love doing? What can I talk about all day? And you know, if you're still lost with that, then, you know, read some books, try things. Just I was lost. I did a big career 180. I was working in IT for 7 years, and I wasn't fulfilled, and I didn't really know what my purpose was, or what I wanted to do. And, you know, you meet other people who it's very clear from an early age, and they just love rock climbing or singing or I don't know. And yeah, so I just traveled, and I was like, fucking try everything. Just go for it. Just give that a go, give that a go. Who knows? You just never know when you might find something you really love. And I became a yoga teacher, didn't really feel fulfilled in that, did a few other things, and then, you know, I really loved helping people and contributing to people, something I always kind of loved from my old world. Even though I didn't really align with the IT world, I still loved helping. So that was kind of where I came to here with this work. And that might change in another 10 years. I also love acting and performing, and, you know, maybe who knows how that will go or where that will go. But that might be something I pursue in the future. Who knows? But yeah, and maybe, you know, some might say the soul has a purpose to evolve and grow and become more conscious. I do align with that idea as our kind of behind all of that. You know, I've maybe zoomed in a little bit there on a purpose, but behind all of that, I think our purpose is to evolve and grow and become more conscious, aware human beings. So I think with all of that, as you maybe go through these different stages of life, or these different chapters, then you're going to gain your awareness and become a more conscious being, or not. There's certainly some people that don't. But there's a beautiful line, I think, that really stuck with me from, again, Viktor Frankl, where people are saying, what is the meaning of life? What is the meaning of life? And he flips that question. He kind of 180s it. And it's, instead of you asking life, what is the meaning of it? Perhaps it is life asking you, what is the meaning you give it? And I think this is a beautiful thought. And it's so true, because you can have two people that can go through a similar experience. One comes out traumatized, one comes out empowered and driven to conquer the world. And what's up with that? It's the meaning they gave it. So, yeah, that would be my few cents worth on purpose.
Nice. And finally, what are you grateful for today?
I'm really grateful for having this podcast done. I've been really excited for this podcast. This is my first one on this topic.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I really appreciate it. Thank you. And I really want to help. Like I kind of mentioned to you at the beginning, you know, I don't care about hypnosis or NLP. For me, my question was what's working, what's helping people, because the modern therapy system really is failing in a lot of areas. And just taking that NLP modeling philosophy of success. Who is successful therapists? Who is doing successful change work? And the more I looked into it, the more a lot of these people had a foundation in hypnosis and NLP. And, you know, that's why I do it. Because that seems to be what's the best tools that we currently know about as human beings. I'm sure AI will take that away from me in a few months, but I'll enjoy it while it lasts.
Yeah, for sure. But no, like you say, it's all tools, and it's just like you say, I think people can tell that you want to help them. And yeah, it's not being dogmatic, it's just using the most effective tools that can get the results. And yeah. But yeah, where can people find you? Where can they get in touch if they want to maybe work with you, or if any ladies want to hit you up, where can they find
I mean, my website's probably the best place. Sam Gallon, SAMGALLON, N for November, .com.au, AU for Australia. And I mean, I do have an Instagram, which is also Sam Gallon. I am going through a kind of a phase at the moment of not using it. It's my internal conflict between really helping people in mental health and not wanting to support a platform that I think is responsible for so many of the mental health issues. I mean, we could do a whole podcast on just how fucked up social media is and how it's destroying so many things about, human beings. But I mean, you can find me on Instagram too. So, but I try and just use that once a week, and I just check it once a week. And that's Sam_Gallon or Sam Gallon. It'll be the first result. But yeah, and the ladies, yeah, maybe the local pub in Murwillumbah, the town I'm in. No, I never go to the pub. Yeah, no, we'll see. I'm sure they'll find a creative way to surprise me living.
Yeah. Yeah, I do charge a 10% fee though if you go through
Yeah,
me.
right.
But no, I appreciate your time and I appreciate everyone if you've listened this far. And yeah, thanks for a great conversation and
Awesome.
much
Thanks,
love.
Dylan. And yeah, appreciate the questions and listening to me banter on for a
No, I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it. Much love.